All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome back. Tonight we're going to talk about wines and regions of New Zealand, which is very fun. This is for Vidi 305, Wines of the World at Folsom Lake College, of course. So we'll just go ahead and dive right into it. So, New Zealand, very cool country. The nearest landmass is Australia, which is 1,000 miles northwest. What made New Zealand such a big character in the world of wine is their Sauvignon Blanc. If you go to a store, if you go to a restaurant, you will find a New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc. They're fantastic wines, and they have a very special character that is really hard to replicate anywhere else, right? So, and part of that is their climate, right? So, New Zealand has the coldest maritime climate of what's considered New World winemaking. And because of the shape of the island, no vineyard is more than 80 miles from the sea. So it's a very long and skinny island with lots of diversity and rich culture. So speaking of culture, the natives of New Zealand, the Maori, right? These are very proud people with rich culture. They still live in New Zealand to this day. They're very famous for their tribal tattoos, the haka chanting, and the dance that they do. And if you aren't aware of the haka, I mean, we have some famous celebrities that have brought it into modern culture, like Dwayne The Rock Johnson, who isn't necessarily New Zealand, but of like the Polynesian kind of descent. So lots of similarities in culture there. But as far as what we see the haka used in traditionally today on the mainstream is if you watch rugby, the New Zealand All Black team actually performs a haka before the beginning of each game. So the haka is very special because it's known to be a preparation for battle for male warriors. It can also be done by women. It's this chant, and each family has a very specific one with specific moves, but it's very powerful. It's supposed to be like inspiring and uplifting, but it's also supposed to be like intimidating to your opponent as well. So it's really cool display of culture and tradition. It's also used to welcome distinguished guests, acknowledge great achievements, occasions, or even funerals, which is really crazy too. So it's not uncommon to see the haka done at like a graduation, a wedding, or anything like that. So very, very cool. The Maori are also known for specifically this face tattoo on the chin. It's a very big part of their culture. And some women, even today, like there's a news anchor in New Zealand that has embraced the traditional chin tattoo, which I think is really cool. She is Maori, and then the Maori are also known for this like intimidation face where they make their eyes really big and they stick out their tongue, and it's something that they do if they don't necessarily they're trying to ward off like an evil spirit or try to intimidate you as well. So it's very cool. I do have a link to a video for the haka here. It's really amazing. Like I don't really see much anything like this displayed in culture these days from anywhere else. I think it's really amazing, and sometimes it's even like slightly comical at the difference in culture exchange between the New Zealand All Blacks like performing their haka, and like they're so proud, and it's such a beautiful thing, and then like a culture like France who doesn't have anything like that, like this French team on the field playing rugby or something, and they're just like so confused but also intimidated. So it's really an interesting and cool display to witness. So I highly recommend you check out this link and watch some videos. It's really cool. Okay, so that's a little bit about New Zealand. Now let's hop into the wine regions, right? So New Zealand is kind of split into two regions. There's a North Island and a South Island. The top regions include Marlborough, which we have right here on the very northern tip of the southern island. Then we also have Hawke's Bay, which is kind of on the eastern side of the North Island. We have Gisborne, which is just north of Hawke's Bay. And then we have Wairapa, which is here at the very southern point of the North Island. So there's a lot of winemaking regions in New Zealand and lots to explore, but those will be the top regions that we focus on tonight. Okay. Okay, so top varieties for New Zealand are grapes that you'd commonly find, what they're known for, what they specialize in. So Sauvignon Blanc is by far their number one, right? It's very vibrant and crisp. What characterizes Sauvignon Blanc from New Zealand is it has a very intense grapefruit character, and it can be super tropical, more citrus based, and very lean and acidic. Very fresh wines. They can also be very green, like grassy, gooseberry, even potentially some bell pepper characteristics. But because it's so cool, the climate's so cool in New Zealand is to be much more zippy than Sauvignon Blanc made like in El Dorado County, right? So in Boger, the Sauvignon Blanc is much more like riper fruits. It'd be higher alcohol generally, so more body and more of like a melon character rather than grapefruit. So very different wines. But Sauvignon Blanc is number one in New Zealand. Next on the list, though, if you wanted to explore some other varieties, they're also well known for their Chardonnay, their Pinot Gris, their Riesling, both dry and sweet. They also make some wonderful sparkling wines, white and rosé, and Pinot Noir, which is typically characterized as earthy and elegant. It's a cool climate, so this does make sense, right? A hotter climate, Pinot Noir would be more fruit-forward and bolder. Then we have Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, and Syrah. And these are in very small plantings in very select parts of the island because it is so cool, but it does grow there and it is successful. So that's what you could find in New Zealand for the most part. I'm sure there are other things as well. Okay, so now we're just going to head into some of the regions. This is Marlborough. This is New Zealand's most famous and largest wine region. It's dominated by Sauvignon Blanc plantings, and the vineyard area itself covers 2/3 of the country's total planted area. So 2/3 of the entire country, which is insane. It is also known as the most sunny and dry area in New Zealand. The Maori referred to it as the place with the hole in the cloud, which is really interesting. So we have some more sites here for you guys if you'd like to read up more on Marlborough or just New Zealand wine in general. One of the famous labels that you'll see imported to the States from Marlborough, there's lots because it's such a big region, right? But Whitehaven I highly recommend the Sauvignon Blanc. It's one of my favorite out of all of the ones from Marlborough specifically, and it's very affordable. It's like $16 for a bottle of wine, and it is screw cap. So just like I mentioned in the Australia presentation, New Zealand is also known for utilizing a lot of screw cap for their wines, and there's nothing wrong with that. A lot of really high quality wines, and interestingly enough, like wines from New Zealand aren't generally extremely expensive, but they are very, very highly held in high regards, right? So they're very respected. So don't let the screw cap or the price deter you. They're very good wines. Okay, so here specifically we see a pie chart that highlights the grape varieties that are planted in Marlborough, and 81% is just Sauvignon Blanc, but they do have some small plantings of Pinot Noir, Pinot Gris, and Chardonnay, and then this purple slice is just other, right? So anything else. Cool. So if we're going to try to capture an essence for what Marlborough Sauvignon Blanc tastes like, these are very intense aromatic wines. Zesty, grapefruit character, a mouth-watering acidity. So this is when you consume a wine or any other beverage that has high acid, it'll actually make you salivate. That's a really good indication that you're drinking a high acid wine, is if it's making your mouth water. Other components include green pepper, also known as bell pepper. We call it bell pepper in the States. Gooseberry, and tropical flavors, which is very fun. And then here's a Cloudy Bay label. Okay, and then just hopping over to the Northern Island, now we're in Hawke's Bay. So this is New Zealand's second largest wine region. It's much more diverse, and they're capable of producing both amazing red and white wines. They're very famous for their red blends and for their Chardonnay. The wineries span all over the valleys, the coastal cliffs, and the mountainous areas. So lots of diversity in landscape, absolutely. And they also hold frequent wine and food festivals. So this would be a very good place to visit because you could try lots of different things and see different landscapes. And yeah. So here we have a pie chart of the varieties in Hawke's Bay. And as you can see, we have about 25% plantings is Chardonnay, followed by Sauvignon Blanc. We also have Pinot Gris and Syrah. We have a very small sliver of Merlot. We have Pinot Noir, Cabernet Sauvignon, and about 7.5% is under the other designation. So it's just other varieties grouped into there and probably in very small plantings. Okay, so if we're going to focus on a grape variety from Hawke's Bay, it'd probably be its Chardonnay. Again, we're seeing another white wine with lots of acid and high intensity flavors. So I really do think that this is a common thread between in all New Zealand wines, and I think that's why I love them so much. They're just so fragrant and intense and fresh. It's really hard to compete with, honestly. So they have a finely tuned acidity, which balances rich characteristics, citrus notes, and it can have tropical fruits if it was produced in a stainless steel style. So stainless steel style meaning that it was a Chardonnay that was fermented in a stainless steel tank. They did not utilize oak, right? So it helps keep the fruity characters. If oak was involved, it would incorporate more of the spices, like vanilla, that would be commonly attributed to oak. But specifically in the stainless steel style, you can utilize those tropical fruits more. So, Hawke's Bay. Okay, now we're going to move up the coastline to Gisborne. This is the region that claims Captain Cook's first landfall, which is pretty crazy. I have a link to that if you are into into that fun stuff. There's also the first place. It's the first place in New Zealand to see the sunrise, which is really beautiful. It has high exposure to sun and heat, and this makes it one of the first regions to start their harvest. So they're the earliest ripening region in New Zealand. The majority of plantings here are Chardonnay, followed by Pinot Gris, Merlot, Gewürztraminer, and then other, of course, right? So if we were to try and highlight a wine from Gisborne, it would probably be their Gewürztraminer, Gewürztraminer is a German grape variety. There's supposed to be like two little dots above this U, sorry. And Gewürztraminer is typically something you can have it dry or sweet. It's a beautiful German wine. It has characters of lychee, ginger. That's also true for ones made in Germany. But interestingly enough, this one from Gisborne has Turkish delight in the tasting notes, which I thought was really interesting. So if you're a big fan of the Chronicles of Narnia, or just those books, or just fun desserts, Turkish delight is something that's fun that you can get. You could get it at World Market. Try something new if you haven't had it before, but I thought that was a really interesting tasting note. There are also undertones of lusciously ripe tropical fruits in Gewürztraminer, and the flavors develop over time. Absolutely. So this would be a white wine that is spicy, fresh, aromatic, fruity, and maybe some floral components as well. So very, very fun wine to have. And not that common. Unfortunately, we really should produce more in the States, but we really don't. Okay, then we have Wairapa. This is a wine region, and it's at the very southern tip of the northern island. And this is a Maori given name, which translates to glistening waters. The flagship of this region is Pinot Noir, and they have 3 subregions within this region. That's Masterson, Gladstone, and Marlborough. So within Wairapa. So Pinot Noir, as you can see, is the dominant, but they also have Sauvignon Blanc, Chardonnay, and then some others as well. So with Pinot Noir being their specialty, if we were to dive into this wine to try to describe it from this region specifically, it is overall described as savory and dense, plump cherry, roses, cinnamon, ground pepper, and earthy notes. The palate is generally medium-bodied. It normally displays a vibrant berry, floral, and spice component held together by leathery tannins. So a lot of these components are a common thread in Pinot Noirs across the world. What really stands out to me is the rose description. I think that's really interesting and not very common. Generally speaking, for like Pinot Noir, we do see like earthy tones, pepper, cinnamon, and those fruity components like cherry and dark berries. But the floral component is something that's new, to me at least, and I think would be really interesting if you found a wine that was here in the States from this region. So, very, very interesting indeed. Okay. Specialty wines. So these are some specialty like varieties and kind of history to grape growing specifically in New Zealand, right? So there's something planted in New Zealand. It's a Pinot Noir variety, and they call it the gumboot clone. And so it's Pinot Noir, but it's also known as the Abel clone. So it's a specific subset of Pinot Noir that has developed and spread across New Zealand. So this was originally a cutting of Pinot Noir. It was stolen from France, from Domaine de la Romane Conti in Burgundy. It was smuggled into New Zealand in the mid-1970s in a rain boot, of all things. So they called it a gum boot over there. It was intercepted in the New Zealand Auckland Airport Customs by Malcolm Abel, who realized that it was a grapevine. The cutting was sent to the government's Viticultural Research Center to be processed properly, right? We can't just bring in plants or animals or things into countries without going through special testing and restrictions, right? We don't want to bring in like a disease or something that could threaten the ecosystem, especially something as delicate and necessary to protect like a island like New Zealand, right? Anyways, it passed the processing at the government's Viticultural Research Center, and the first cuttings were released, and Abel planted them. So as of now, Abel's cuttings have been shared far and wide. The clone is known as New Zealand's premium Pinot Noir clone today, which is pretty crazy. So if you were going to smuggle a cutting, right, you would take a cutting off the vine and then preferably root it, right, for travel, then bring it across, and then propagate it from there. So cuttings from that plant, after it successfully took root in New Zealand, have supplied Pinot Noir to the rest of the country, which is crazy. So that's the gumboot clone, but it's traced all the way back to France. Okay, so when we talk about wine laws for New Zealand, they're actually very similar to Australia. The laws are generated by the country's Food Act and food regulations, and they have the same percentages, right? So for a variety, at least 85% of the wine must be that claimed variety. If you have 2 grapes on the label, listed in order of percentage, right? So the higher percentage variety is listed first. Then if you have area, district, or region, 85% must come from that place, right? So, same as Australia. Okay, lovely. And then we have our learning objectives. So again, a shorter presentation because you guys have 2 lectures this week. So combined gives you about the regular time for 1 standard lecture. I always encourage you guys to do some more digging, learn some new things if you were inspired. Unfortunately, this class is only 8 weeks and we can only cover so much. But if you get the baseline and it inspires you to learn more, then that's a total win for me. So anyways, if you guys have any questions, send me an email. And as always, I look forward to seeing you next time.